Hivin and Vibin with Dr. Bibi.
Hello, everyone, and how have you all been? We are here at Hivin and Vibin with Dr. BB once again, and this program is about how do you coach. So today we have with us our guest is Dr. Michele D'Amico. Now, Dr. Michele D'Amico is an executive coach. She is also the founder of Vetta Leadership with a rich background of 16 years of experience in leadership transformation at premier organizations throughout the US. So, Michelle works mainly with the United States and organizations. And her specialized expertise is in human behavior, emotional intelligence, and psychological safety. These three things shape the workplace and gives her the unique approach to executive coaching. She holds a PsyD in clinical psychology, specialized coaching certifications in mediation and organization development. She is uniquely equipped to navigate complex interpersonal dynamics and enhance leadership effectiveness. And she's also she's the founder, or she can explain better. Michelle will come to this and you can explain more on the Founders Collective. This is a once a month trusted advisory board for women founders who want strategic growth, sharper leadership, and real community. So here we have with us a clinical psychologist who has turned into an executive coach, and I would like to know more about the journey, which will help us all. Hello, Michelle, and welcome to Hivin and Vibin with Dr. BB. How do you coach?
How do I coach? Oh my goodness. Um, the overall concept is, it's leadership coaching, which is a very big umbrella. But what I do is I first have a consultation and try to understand what the issues are, what the challenges are, what things we need to work on. And that takes different forms. In organizations, I might do a 360 assessment. For individuals, it's just the two of us, that sort of thing. But mostly what I do is one-on-one coaching to help transform, change some behaviors that are not working for the individual.
Fantastic. So let's start with why did you choose to study clinical psychology in the first place?
Oh boy, such a journey. So I originally was accepted into law school. I thought I wanted to be an attorney and couldn't attend because at the time I was going through divorce and I had a very small child and no support. So I put that aside and kept thinking, so what is it and I've always loved human behavior. I've always been fascinated by it. So I decided to get my PhD. And so that's what I did. The thing is that while I was getting my PhD, I needed to work and I found coaching and loved coaching. Because coaching is really about that present and that forward, that future, moving people forward. And I just love that. So I stuck with coaching. However, my psychology comes into play every single time.
Lovely. And to do a PsyD, you would have studied clinical psychology earlier as well. Am I right?
Correct. In
So,
my master's. Right. My
correct. And
master's.
before that, in your graduation too?
Yes, that was way back when. Now, when I tell you what I graduated in, you'll know how old I am. Probably it was liberal. It was liberal arts at Penn State University. So yes, because I'm from back east originally.
Right. So, and how did you choose psychology at that time?
Well, at that time, I wasn't studying psychology. I was actually studying communication type things, and I love all of that, and I put it all aside for quite some time until I tried to get into law school, was accepted, couldn't go, and all of those things. And then I thought, you know what, psychology is really the thing for me. I just love the human condition, human behavior, why we do what we do, and then the neuroscience about around how do we change those things, right? That we want to change.
Lovely. We are going to come to these things. You are touching my absolutely loved topics, and we will come to those. First, to unravel, what made you find the Vetta leadership?
Um, because I started, building my own coaching career, and I thought, well, you know what, I think I need to have, a business name. I wanted a business name, and Vetta is Italian for summit or peak, and I'm Italian, of course, and I love my background, and so I chose that and just started building on that as my company to put out there.
Lovely. So you were not only wearing the hat of a clinical psychologist, you were also wearing the hat of a business person simultaneously.
Yes, yeah, learned a
Because
lot.
yeah, because a lot of clinical psychologists leave it at being a clinical psychologist, but you decided to wear a business hat and create a name for it and also define your specialization, in what you really want to concentrate on. How did that choice happen?
Oh my gosh, that's been a long journey. So I've been doing this for more than 16 years, really almost 17 years. And it started out, of course, just taking on whatever I could, career coaching and life coaching and what, using the psychology. And it started out there. And then I started pivoting because I wanted to get into the organizations because I was also studying organizational development, love all of that. And so I started pivoting and moving my business in that direction. I still do individuals, but moving it into the organizational piece. And then from there, I pivot a few times in my career. So I now part of my pivot, not the full pivot, but part of it is working with a lot with women. I still do men, of course. I still work with men and work organizations, a lot of men up in that top leadership, in those top leadership spots. And so I do that. But I also absolutely love helping women, not just in leadership, but, business leadership, personal. I just love helping women find their voice.
Right. So that is another focus that you have started, that you have adopted of late.
Yes. Yes. I started the
Fantastic.
Women
Yep.
Founders Collective, and yeah.
Okay. So before we get on to the Women Founders Collective, let me ask about your specialized expertise and in human behavior and emotional intelligence and psychological safety. So let's start with human behavior. How do you find it different? The human behavior is different for leaders and non-leaders.
The truth is, human behavior is human behavior. We do what we do until it no longer works for us, right? And that doesn't necessarily mean that the payoff is good. The payoff could be bad, and we keep doing it because it's familiar. So it is the same across the board. It's just a matter of sort of digging in and figuring out a little bit closer, getting a little bit closer to the foundational aspect of the behavior, where it's coming from, making people self-aware, right? So when they start to get self-aware, then the light bulbs start going off and, oh, okay. And that's when you can start to change your behavior and change it so it sticks. And then that brings in the neuropsychology of all of it and how we can actually change those pathways in our brains. It takes work, but we can do it. So.
Right. I was coming to neuropsychology, and I'm glad that you picked it up. That how is, from a clinical psychology perspective, how is the neuropsychology of a leader different from a non-leader? What do they do that makes it different?
I would say if there is any difference, it is that they are usually a little bit further along in terms of, oh, I can change this, right? Now, they don't always want to, but they're a little further along in understanding the change and how the change happens. They're not quite as stuck a lot of times, but for the most part, neuroscience is the same for everybody. It's the pathways that we build along the way is why we do what we do and why we continue to do those behaviors. So in that respect, it is pretty much the same.
Lovely. Is there any inherent leadership that you find in people, that they do have some leadership capabilities that they were born with, and they tap into those? And is that there for every human?
No, not at all. It can be learned, though. There's no doubt that it can be learned, but it's not. They're not born with it. And I find a lot of leaders. I mean, why I have work is because there's a lot of leaders who not only weren't born with it, but still haven't learned it.
Right. Right. What in your perspective as a clinical psychologist, what would be your capabilities or attributes that you would say that, this makes a leader?
So somebody who can be vulnerable, someone who I can help understand emotional intelligence and what that means in terms of being a leader. But to be vulnerable, they need to be vulnerable, they need to be curious, and they need to be open and kind. So those things, when I see that in a leader, I know I have a lot of good stuff to work with. That's those are foundational for me, especially emotional intelligence and vulnerability. Those are foundational for me. Those are the kinds of things that when I talk about psychological safety in the workplace, those are the kinds of things that are very important. Those are the things that make people want to stay and work for that leader and do their best.
Lovely. Coming to emotional intelligence, do you think emotional intelligence can be learned?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And yep, go on, please. I'm sorry.
I know that a lot of people don't even know what it is. And once I explain it to them or we start working on it, they go, oh, okay. I see how I can do something different right now. I can understand that. So yeah, I can absolutely, I think there was a time a long time ago where I think people thought, no, you either have it or you don't, but that just simply isn't true. Now, empathy, which is part of emotional intelligence, there are some people who simply don't have empathy, and that's a different story. Then we're getting into more of the psychopathology and all of that stuff. So,
yeah. So when we are talking about emotional intelligence and the fact that it can be developed or learned, what and how can you learn emotional intelligence?
it takes practice, okay? But the first thing is in the first quadrant, if you will, there's like 4 quadrants, and the first quadrant is self-awareness. So it takes practice to become self-aware of, oh, here is how I am reacting, or here is what I am saying, and could say something different or whatever. And so we go through the quadrants, talk about that, practice it, give them some tools and some other things that can help. But it's practice. It's knowing what it is, first of all, and then being able to practice different behaviors, which at the same time is what creates those different pathways in your brain that you can then go to instead of the old pathway. Oh, now I have a new pathway that I can use.
Michelle, I have found, correct me, but when in my experience, I have found that there are quite a few leaders who not only who have used self-awareness and even self-regulation, emotional regulation, but have taken it for granted and have reached a stage where they think they're doing it, but they're not doing it anymore.
That's
That
interesting.
when we have that kind of a situation, have you faced that kind of a situation? And if you have, what have you done with it? Or what do
I
you do
have
with it?
not. Yeah, yeah. I have not. Now, I have come across people who think they have it and they don't, but I haven't come across people who take it for granted. That's interesting to me. I'm not. I would love to press you on that a little bit. Is how do you take that for granted? How do people take that for granted?
So what I've found is behaviors where they think they are being emotionally, intelligent. They think they are being empathetic or being compassionate or being able to put themselves in the other person's shoes, which is all about self-awareness. And they think they're doing it, and but they have already jumped that stage and gone on to the next stage to judge what that person is doing, or what that person is. And they are presuming that because they have seen it so many times before, because our brain goes back to patterns and and trends. So they go back to those patterns and trends which they have learned for years now. So say a person has been a leader for 10, 15 years, or even say 20 years. So I'm talking about those kind of leaders, and when they get back, they think that they have done all those things, those check boxes that we check in our head when we are meeting someone or talking to someone. But actually they have just skipped over all that and come to the stage where they think they have analyzed, and they've reached an output because of the trends or the patterns in the back of their head, forgetting that an individual is unique. And
Mhm.
there could be, some patterns could match, but not all of them may match. So
So,
that is
well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
so
Yeah,
that is the
what I think I'm hearing from you is actually that it's not that they have taken it for granted, it's that they don't know what it is really. They don't
okay.
really know. And I would
Okay.
start then at the very beginning with those people because they don't really know. If they did, that's why I think, it's hard to think about, taking it for granted because it is something you do need to work on, right? But it's what I'm hearing from you, and maybe I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm wrong. But what I'm hearing from you is that they just really don't know what it is.
Right, that's another perspective to look at, that they actually never did know. I have also found people who are very socially intelligent, extremely socially intelligent, and they know that they can show empathy in certain places, which makes them, you know, look like a leader. And but that is only superficial. They're not really getting in. They do the motions of self-awareness, and they do the motions of empathy and compassion and all that, but they are well aware that they are not really invested in it. They know that this is something that they can get away with little effort,
Mhm.
and it will do the work, and they will be able to win some brownie points, which will help their image, and it will help them to grow. Have you had this kind of experience?
Well, I would argue that that is not somebody who actually has empathy. That is someone who it's performative empathy. And so, then I would look at a number of other things. And there are other things too. Empathy is very, very important in psychological safety in the workplace and those things. But so is vulnerability, and so is curiosity, and of course kindness, right? All of those things are good. And the curiosity piece is about who are your people? Who are the people that are working with you and for you? And they are individuals. So getting to know them as individual is very important. And I don't think if you don't do that, how can you empathize with someone if you don't know who they are? So I would argue they don't really have empathy. It's performative. And I would go back to the beginning. That's my take.
Lovely. Lovely. I hope, my audiences out there are listening, that there is a difference between feeling that there is self-awareness and that there is empathy, and also doing a performance of empathy and compassion and actually not being an absolute empath.
Right. We could also talk about people without empathy or sociopaths and psychopaths. And we could go down that road because I love that stuff. But and to be honest with you, a lot of upper level C-suite, they are kind of like on the border sometimes.
I was coming to that. I was actually going to ask you about how many narcissistic C-suite leaders have you met so far? Or
Oh my
how
gosh.
many charismatic C-suite leaders have you met? And charisma can have good and bad to it too, and so is narcissistic. Though narcissistic has a more ill reputation compared to charismatic leadership. But uh, what do you do with these kind of C-suite leaders, and how do you really
Yeah.
go about their their approach to the entire emotional intelligence part of their human behavior, because that is so integral to them.
Yeah. And I couldn't even tell you how many I meet like that because there are a lot. And part of that is in order for you to get to that level, a lot of times you have to have some of those qualities, right? But a lot of them are truly narcissistic. And so working with that, it starts with building trust with them because and helping them to understand I'm not there to judge them. I am not there for any of those reasons. And once you can build the trust, and sometimes it takes a month or two to build the trust, it doesn't happen overnight. But once I do that and I build the trust, and then I understand what narcissistic personality is. And let's be clear, I'm not talking about what we call NPD, narcissistic personality disorder, necessarily. So, but narcissistic tendencies, which we all have to some degree or another. However, once I build that trust, then it's about knowing how to work with a narcissist. And that means, because basically a narcissist is like I always say, like a vase that doesn't have a bottom. And so you have to constantly pour in the things that make them feel good about themselves. And so you have to learn how to work with them in order to get what you need through it, and to help them. Now, I will be honest with you, there have been some that will not change, that just simply will not. And as a coach, I have to know, and even as a psychologist, I have to know when to walk away.
Right, I totally agree with that, and I'm glad you picked it up that at times they just don't change, and you know that they're not going to change, and then you know that it's time to walk away. Then create your own borders and your boundaries. Lovely. With that boundaries and borders, then we talk about psychological safety. And you also spoke about trust and building trust, which is again a part of psychological safety. And I think trust is, correct me if I'm wrong, but trust is a building block for psychological safety.
Yes, without a doubt. It is one of the first building blocks for psychological safety. And I'm sure you know this, is that it can take years to build the trust and only a second to lose it. And so
Absolutely.
that is something that has to be ingrained and worked on, and something that if you truly uh, you know want to be a kind of leader where people want to work for you, they have to trust you and you have to trust them. And that's a big piece that a lot of people forget. They think, oh, they just need to, I need to build the trust that they trust that I'm going to do what I'm going to do. It is also about trusting them to do what they're going to do, because part of being a great leader is to build your people up, to give them the tools to become a great leader eventually, if that's what they want, but to feel good about themselves and their job and do what they can do to the best of their abilities.
Lovely. Um, if there are any leaders listening today, I hope there's a little bit of peace here for you for reflection. And I find in my practice, I find that reflection helps a lot. How do you feel about the practice of reflection?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If we can't reflect on who we have been and where we have been and what we have done, right? If we can't reflect on it, how can you make changes and move forward? You have to be able to reflect. And at the same time, I will say you cannot stay there. It is really important to do some reflection, but not stay there. You've got to move forward.
Right. How do you reflect and what do you reflect on? Or let me put it in a different way. When you are reflecting, could I then use reflection for you and ask you now as to when you were a child and today what you are, what are the attributes that you have carried so far?
Oh, from when I was a child? Oh my goodness. Let's see. Well, certainly curiosity. Um, and what's interesting to me when I look back is that there was a time when, as I was a little girl with a few brothers, one sister, but she came along much later. And I'm in an Italian Catholic family, basically. And so girls were not seen, they were seen but not heard. So girls were not seen as right. And so I lost my voice for a while. And so reflecting on that is really bringing it all forward is that, the last maybe 15 years or so have really worked on my voice again. In fact, I wrote a book called Unmuted, and it's about women and their voices collectively and individually. And I when I reflect on that, I think, wow, because I was very timid, for a while, right? And so I do that kind of thing. If I'm going to reflect on my childhood, which I try not to too much anymore, but no, when I reflect on my childhood, but I try to reflect every day. And I was taught by Marshall Goldsmith is where I received my coaching certification. And one of the things he says is at the end of every day is to say, what did I do today that I could have done better? And what did I learn? How was I today? And just on a daily basis. And so, okay, what could I do differently tomorrow? If that comes up again. And I run into that even with a lot of my coachees because they ruminate. They don't just reflect, they ruminate. And they go over and over and try to change the past, which is impossible to do. And so it's about learning the difference, which I love what you said, the reflection. So it's like learning the difference between reflection and rumination. You cannot stay there. We have to move forward. And the best thing to do is to learn from the past. Go forward.
My next question was on the difference between rumination and reflection, and you touched upon it before I could ask. That is great.
We're on the same wavelength here. I don't know.
So with that, I think it's mainly because leadership development is our base knowledge.
Yeah.
We both have that same common thing. So thinking in the same direction is just that part of it. And when you have psychological safety and you also are dealing with leadership, so how much of that really affects workplace well-being? Because you are you not only are an executive coach, but you also are working with organization development. So how much does workplace well-being play a role? And do you do coaching on it too?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. And it's huge. It's somewhere, I can't remember if it's 72 or 73. I'm getting my percent of people leave their jobs because there is no psychological safety, because the leaders are just, so that's a huge number. And that also has to do with retention, right? So that's costing the company a lot of money just in terms of retention. Not even thinking about, oh, people now, because there's no psychological safety, yeah, they're coming to work, but are they really doing their best work? Do they really care? Are they invested? Because in order to have a solid working organization that is, that innovates and that, keeps moving forward, you have to have people who want to be there. And psychological safety is the bottom line, and creating that, which all the things that we've been talking about, right? All the trust and the vulnerability and curiosity and all of those things that we've been talking about, reflection, emotional intelligence, all those things go into that bucket, right? And it takes time. And what I have found, unfortunately, a lot of times it is a systemic problem. I'll be brought in to work with one C-suite, and I find out that this is a systemic problem, or it comes down from the CEO. And that's when it gets difficult. And that's when I try to use my organizational development training, but sometimes it's, if I'm not working in that capacity with them, it is hard to change the culture. And so it's about just working with that individual and doing the best we can with that individual to work, with their people. I've been brought into organizations before where I'm brought in for one C-suite and I end up working with 4 because, during my 360 assessment, I find out that they all feel the same way. Right? They're all having the same issues. And so that's a systemic problem. And then trying to work with that.
That was the next part of it, that because of late I have been reflecting on my coaching practice, and what I feel is that um, coaching one leader from one organization does not really change that organization, because organizations, leaders have a ripple effect on the organization. And it is much better to take the entire group of, C-suite or the next level, whatever, so say it's all vice presidents or it's all the C-suites of CXOs of that organization, and giving them the coaching. They will obviously need some individual coaching, of course, because they're individuals, but then a group coaching, because it helps them then to come together, to become cohesive. This is just my thought yet. I am not very sure whether this can be actually practiced. Have you done this kind of a thing? And Michelle, and how have you achieved it?
So just one time when I was brought in for one and ended up working with 4 of them. And so I also developed a system where the 4 of them met on a regular basis, right? So that we could get right. And I was involved in that. I would, to kind of facilitate those meetings. And so, but in that situation, I will tell you the truth is the CEO did not like it. The CEO was not willing to make, so all I could really do was help those C-suite deal with, their people and work together for them, right? And not, the CEO had created this silo kind of thing, and no psychological safety. The C-suite that I worked with did not trust, did not trust this person, thought that this person was a visionary and loved that piece, but this person was not a good leader and did not develop a culture of safety at all.
Do you think that has got to do with competition? Because a lot of CEOs believe, and this has been, has been illustrated as being an example, that building competition actually makes the organization sharper and better. So does this have got to do with that, building the competition rather than being cohesive, to bring that competition so that, one tries to do better than the other, and that actually pulls the organization into a different growth path, a more
separate.
Steeper growth path.
Yes. I can tell you 3 times for sure that I've worked with organizations where that was the case. It was the competition piece, and the competition came down from the very, very top. And that's where it gets sticky, because that's the culture. And so what I try to do in those situations is really just try to help them develop a way to work within that system and do good, and help their people. It's really all I can do. At least that's the way I see it, because when I run into that, there's a real sticking point. Yeah.
Lovely. Michelle, let's come to now that you are building Founders Collective. What made you start this program, and what do you envision for this program?
Great questions. I love women and helping women develop in so many ways. One of my favorite books, okay, so I read this a number of years ago when it first came out, called How Women Rise. And I used to do a lot of presentations on it. And I never did a single presentation where any woman said to me, I don't see myself in those 12 behaviors. They all would say at least 5 of those behaviors, because the book is about 12 behaviors that women do. They get them to a certain level in their careers or in their life and then can't get them further. And so after I read that, and I'd given a few workshops, and I just realized I need to help women. I really want to do that. And so I started out doing just a once a month meeting with just women to come together and talk. And then it sort of grew into the Founders Collective, which is, female entrepreneurs and small business owners to come together and help each other get over the challenges and stop doing everything and playing bigger than they ever thought they could.
When you're working with women, have you found that women don't always applaud another woman? I'll give you an example. I was in very recent experience of a very young girl who is doing pretty well, and she shared her latest experience with her friends. It was just school friends. While the men applauded, or rather the boys, call them boys, if they applauded, the women were silent. They didn't applaud, they didn't acknowledge, and they didn't put her down, but they didn't do the other bit as well.
Yeah.
Why does this happen with women?
Oh gosh, I pondered that question a lot. I recently did a post on it in LinkedIn because one of my clients said to me, at least men stab you in the front, women stab you in the back.
Absolutely.
I thought, that's really interesting. And I think that sometimes it's because there are so few positions at the top for women that when women get there, they don't want to give it up. And so they kind of pull the ladder up and don't mentor other women and try to get them. I think that might be part of it. I think sometimes, it's just a lack of empathy, a lack of self-awareness, because women are subjected to that too, or we can, be that way too. So I think sometimes it's that sort of thing. And it is disheartening, which is one of the reasons that I started the Founders Collective, and that I love helping women and really lifting them up. I get so much joy out of that. And, because a lot of women, I've got clients female clients who are at almost the top of their field, or very close to it, very intelligent, have master's degrees, PhDs, and their husbands downgrade them all the time, you know, put them down or don't give them the support that they need and stuff. And it's so disheartening to me. And I think sometimes women, maybe we learn that from men. I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that. It's a good question to ask, but I'd really be speculating because I haven't done any real research on that. But I agree with you. I've seen it. I've heard it. Yeah.
Lovely. I think, Michelle, you and I have our next research project ready then, and we should work on this.
That's a great idea. I'll do that. I'm right there with you.
So, but with that, I would now come, I'll turn the mirror towards you and ask you, you being a clinical psychologist, I'm sure you see more layers in a human than others would see. And I don't think that all the layers are very positive or even seemingly positive all the time. So and going through it every day, and now for decades going through it, what do you do to sustain your energy? What do you do to, face the next day and know that you're going to face the whole rigmarole all over again?
That's a great question. Yeah. Sometimes it's hard. I'll be honest. Sometimes it's hard, but I do love what I do. And my brain just automatically goes there to behavior and to, ask questions. So I love what I do. But the other thing that is really helpful for me is I've learned how to be a healthy empath. So I've worked with people and talked to people who are unhealthy empaths where they take it all on. I don't take it on. When I'm finished with my call, besides my notes, I'm finished with that call because now it's not up to me, it's their work, right? We did the work in the hour, now it's their work, and I don't take it with me. I've learned not to take it with me, and I can empathize with them. I can be compassionate, and when we're on the call, but it doesn't go with me. I've learned that over the years. It's the only way for me, to be able to turn it off.
Fantastic. So, what are the things that you do to turn yourself off?
I play pickleball, okay? I love it. It is my happy place. I love it because I think about nothing else except the game, right? And so I love that. It just takes my mind completely off of it. And then I'm exhausted when I'm finished. So I'm not thinking about anything. But the other thing I do, which you might find very odd or funny, is that I originally wanted to be a forensic psychologist. And so I am very, very much into sociopaths and psychopaths and all of that thing. And so I used to study, years ago, I studied serial killers. It was just a hobby of mine. And believe it or not, that takes my mind off of the executive coaching. So.
Right. I did try to do that myself because one of my favorite characters is Hercule Poirot, and I love Agatha Christie. I have almost read, I think, all of her books and seen most of her movies. I mean, and not once, but multiple times. So for me, Miss Marple is one of those characters, which I think is an embodiment of the old woman. But having done all that, of late, I find a change in myself. I find that when I see a character, or when serial killers, especially when I'm watching a movie on it, or I get, I feel it's such a waste of energy. It's such a waste of emotions. It's such a waste of a good human being. And I just can't. And I try to watch movies which are depictions of true events and not fiction versions. And I find that I really feel sorry for those humans. And then I don't want to get into it anymore and I come away from it. So I have to learn your way of, putting it there and saying that's their problem and not mine. I can't do anything more than this. Got to learn that.
Yeah, my daughter would always say to me, Mom, I don't know how you read that stuff and watch that stuff and then go to sleep like nothing. And I'm like, you know what? But it's human behavior and it's human condition, and I've always been fascinated by it. And yeah, I way back in my bachelor's degree, I did a few courses in sociology, and I so much believe in, a lot of it comes from the socioeconomic backgrounds and those things. And so it's just something that fascinates me, and I learn a lot. I really do. So yeah.
I was about to ask you, and this would be my closing question on the role of family in developing a good human being. What is the role of a family?
Oh my goodness. There have been
Or if
so
it is
many
not family,
studies.
it could be the nearest and the closest environment, social environment.
Look, it's always one person who understands and supports you can make a huge difference in your life. It doesn't have to be a full family, it can be, or even a relative. One person can make a huge difference. There have been so many studies way back when they used to think you were either born a serial killer or a psychopath, and family had nothing to do with it, or nurturing had nothing to do with it. And then it swung the other way. And now it's pretty much in the middle, where we understand that it is a combination and it is timing, right? But one person can build, it can help you build resilience in your life. One person who really does love, support, understand, and empathize with you.
Lovely. I hope this gives a lot of wisdom to my audience, because you have to find that one person, and I hope you have met your one person who is making that difference in your life. And I have had a fantastic session with you, Michelle, and this session has taught me so much about executive leadership. It's also taught me so much about, how to work on yourself at the same time. And with that, Michelle, is there anything that you would like to share with my audience? And also, I know if you have to share your connections and how you connect, what is the best way to get in touch with you, those kind of things. If you want to share any message with my audience.
Yes, be curious in life. Just be curious, and learn how to listen. Those things are really, really important. But I love this was lovely, and so thank you so very much. I enjoyed myself completely. And you can reach me at micheledamico.com. Michelle's with one L. My website is under construction right now. My daughter, who's a web designer, is redoing it for me. So that's under construction right now, but you can reach me at LinkedIn at Michele D'Amico, and D'Amico is D'Amico. So MicheleDamico, or my email, Michele@micheledamico.
Perfect. Lovely. This was great and lovely having you, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mhm.